Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to continue on with questions and answers, and I have just a few questions from the last session that I wanted to answer. And one that I thought was very important was, do you use the mean node or the true node? And many people don't know what that even means. And it's very important because those people that might have Rahu or Ketu right on the edge of changing a sign, if you choose the mean node or the true node, it could shift to a different sign, which is totally different. But here's one thing that I've discovered. First, what is it? The true node is where Rahu and Ketu really are, where they are, because they have a very erratic movement. They go back and forth, and then when it comes to the time of eclipses, they stand still for 3 months. And then right after, a couple of months after the eclipses, then they move erratically really fast. Of course, remember, Rahu and Ketu are always moving backwards though. So then they move really fast. But the mean node is when you just take the mean motion of the node within a year, which is you move Rahu and Ketu 1.5 degrees every month instead of all this ups and back and forth. I actually use the true node, but I have to say this, I went back and forth many times trying to figure out which one to use, and they both worked. I don't know why that is, but they both had relevance. So I use both of them. I can't say one's better than the other. One gives just a different effect, and maybe it's where you're headed and where you're going, or where you've been. But it's important to look at both placements. That's what I'm going to answer with that. So another question that I had was somebody was asking about their Saturn Mahadasha. Is it going to be good or bad? You please do not just go online and start looking this stuff up. You have to know how your Saturn or how any planet is placed in order to understand what a dasha is going to be like. And it's not just even what house it's in or what house it rules. Of course, this is very, very important. Or planets conjunct that Saturn if you're going into Saturn Mahadasha. It also revolves around how all the other planets are placed from Saturn. That will give you the whole effects of this entire 19-year cycle. Because once you go into Saturn, then things start to get serious. And whatever house Saturn's in will start to come alive. If it's in your career house, then you're going to get more serious about work and things will change. You'll have more responsibility. If it's in the second house, it really kind of depends on what sign it's in as well. Is it strong by sign? Is it debilitated? Is it exalted? That will give the results of something really good coming financially if it's in the second house. Or maybe it's debilitated and aspected by Mars, which is a first-rate malefic, Mars being in opposition. That would be a downturn financially. So you got to see where it's located, what sign it's in, what aspects it's receiving, and then when you go into the sub-cycles throughout that 19-year period, that will be totally different too. So the way that I see it is you look at where all the planets are placed from that Dasha Lord. In other words, is your Bhukti, which is the next level down, Saturn, Venus, Saturn, Mars, Saturn, Mercury, does it go to the second house from where Saturn is? And if it does, then that sub-cycle will be about what? Finances and money. Does it go to the third house from where the Mahadasha ruling planet is? Then that will be about travel and communications and everything to do with third house variables such as courage, ambition, drive, siblings. If it goes to the eighth house, from where Saturn's located, this could be a time of endings, of major difficult changes, things coming out of the past that you have to deal with, maybe inheritances, maybe losses. So that's how you got to see this whole thing. It's a science. You can't just say, what's my Saturn Mahadasha going to be like? That's ridiculous. And people do this because they just don't know. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I mean, this is where we all start. But when you read the stuff on the internet, it'll scare you to death, especially some of the ancient old teachings. They'll talk about the most dire things on the planet. Don't do that to yourself. It'll make you worry and plant unnecessary wrong thoughts and seeds in your mind. So you got to get a professional to look at some of this stuff, or learn the proper way by taking lessons and courses to understand what you're doing, not just the generality of what that planet is, without understanding how it's located in accordance to all the other planets, what house, what sign, what aspects, all those come into play. And even the yogas, of course, the yogas that these planets are involved in as well. So that's how I'm going to answer that one, which is probably more than you bargained for. Another person asked me what astrological program I use, which I use Parashara's Light by GeoVision software. I love it. I think they do a great job. One thing I love about Parashara's Light is it's one of the very few, if not the only one for Vedic astrology that is usable on a Mac, on an Apple. And the thing is that most astrologers don't like to make their programs for a Mac because Mac always has all these updates, and Parashara's Light has to keep up with the updates. Mihail Boender, who is the creator of Parashara's Light, goes to great lengths to keep up with all the updates, which are overwhelming sometimes, I know. And if you join my university, you will get a 20% discount on Parashara's Light. That's another advantage we have with our schools. So there's some other things that I wanted to cover. Let me see if I can bring up something else. This is from the very last question and answer. Yeah, it's some mean nodes and the true nodes. I like that one. Okay. You know, one person's asking about the moon signs. It's so important to always assess a chart, not only from the ascendant, but from the moon. And somebody else asked me, what do you do if you don't have a time of birth? If you know what day you're born, you can figure out where the moon was. The moon moves in 2.5 days, it stays in the same sign. So basically, you can probably figure out where your moon is. And if you use the moon as the ascendant, it works beautifully. That's what I do if I don't have a birth time. I simply use the moon as the ascendant. Because remember, that's going to give the effects of how you're feeling about everything. So, and somebody else asked about Sati. How do you know if it's going to be difficult or easy or hard? And once again, it depends on how it's placed in the chart. Because some people during Sati, it can be some of their greatest rewards. Remember, Saturn does give us our just rewards. If you've worked really hard and you're diligent, Saturn will reward you. Whereas Jupiter is fun. We have a lot of fun when we're in a Jupiter transit, and it does give expansion, many times wealth, opportunities, and Saturn takes a lot of that away. But when you get your just rewards from Saturn, it is so much more rewarding than anything Jupiter can deliver. Because Saturn, it's what you've worked for. It's what you put your effort and the blood, sweat, and tears into in your life. And when you get the rewards that you've been working towards, there is nothing more fulfilling than Saturn. And above all else, Saturn is wisdom. What is wisdom? It comes with old age. Any of you who are older know the facts about this. A lot of young people think, oh, that they know it all. But there's a really cool song by Bob Dylan, and it's I'm younger than how does it go? I'm younger now than I have been before. And essentially what he's alluding to is once you get older, you realize really how dumb you were when you were younger and you thought you knew it all. So one thing that Saturn does give us is wisdom. And You know, with that kind of wisdom, you never want to go back to being that young. Yeah, you may want to look better or feel better when you're young, but there's nothing better than the wisdom that Saturn will give. And in Sade Sati, you will get that. But another thing I have noticed about Sade Sati that's really significant is this. It usually plays havoc on your relationships, regardless where it is. And I would imagine it's because, well, when Saturn comes to the position of the moon, it's always going to be aspecting the opposite house from the moon in Chandralagna. So it plays havoc on relationships. Let me just say that. So another person says that they received my free newsletter. I love this because what a wealth of information. Yes, and I gave the story about the couple who were stranded out in the ocean. And what they did, and I talked about this in my May YouTube, what they did is they made plans for the future, because when we plan for the future, that is when we can put the focus and positive thoughts of what we're going to create, and that's manifestation. And every detail you can think of about how you're going to manifest the future is a wonderful thing to do to help get out of the difficulties of the now. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information, a consultation, or you would like to receive my free newsletter, go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. Or if you would like to study with me, I have an online university. Come join our community, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.